There are moments in human life when words fail, when pain arrives without warning and explanation, when everything familiar is stripped away, leaving only questions echoing in the silence. The book of Job opens its doors into such a moment. It does not begin with comfort, but with tension. It does not ease the reader into suffering gently. It places us directly into a life that collapses without warning, forcing us to sit with the hardest question faith has ever faced. What does it mean to trust God when nothing makes sense? Job's story does not unfold in a vacuum. He is introduced as a real man, living in a real place, known for integrity, generosity, and reverence for God. Scripture describes him as blameless and upright, someone who feared God and turned away from evil. This introduction matters deeply. The narrative is careful to remove a common assumption before suffering begins. Job's pain is not punishment for hidden sin. His losses are not correction. They arrive in the life of a man already walking faithfully. This challenges a deeply rooted human instinct. We want suffering to be explainable. We want it to follow rules. If pain can be traced to failure, then obedience becomes a shield. But Job's story dismantles that illusion immediately. His righteousness does not protect him from loss. Instead, it becomes the setting in which the mystery of suffering is revealed. The opening scenes shift away from earth to a heavenly council. God's sovereignty is established from the beginning. Nothing unfolds outside his awareness. When the adversary challenges Job's integrity, the question raised is not whether Job believes in God, but why he believes. Is faith merely a transaction, sustained only by blessing? Or is it possible for devotion to exist without reward? This question is not asked for God's information. It is asked for human revelation. Job's life becomes the stage upon which this question is explored, not through theory, but through experience. When loss arrives, it arrives in waves. Job loses his wealth, his servants, and his children in rapid succession. Each messenger brings worse news than the last. The pacing of a narrative mirrors the shock of real tragedy. There is no time to process one loss before the next one lands. And yet, Job's initial response is striking. He grieves deeply, tearing his robe and shaving his head, but he does not curse God. Instead, he acknowledges the fragility of human life, recognizing that everything he had was never truly his to control. This moment reveals something vital about faith. Faith does not deny grief. Job does not suppress sorrow or pretend strength. He mourns honestly. Scripture does not portray stoicism as holiness. Instead, it shows that reverence and grief can coexist. Job's worship rises not because pain is absent, but because trust remains. What does this reveal about God? It reveals a God who does not require emotional suppression. God allows lament. He permits questions. He does not demand artificial calm. The problem is not sorrow. The problem, as the story will later reveal, is distortion of God's character. As the narrative continues, Job's suffering deepens. His health collapses. His body becomes a source of constant pain. He sits among ashes, scraping his sores, isolated and exposed. Even his wife, overwhelmed by despair, urges him to abandon faith altogether. Her words are not cruel. They are human. They reflect the desperation that arises when hope feels unbearable. Job's response is measured, not harsh. He does not dismiss her pain. He simply refuses to let suffering redefine God. He recognizes that if blessing was accepted from God's hand, then hardship cannot automatically negate God's goodness. This is not blind optimism. It is a refusal to reduce God to circumstance. Soon, Job's friends arrive. At first, they do the right thing. They sit with him in silence. This is one of the most overlooked moments in the book. Their presence, without explanation, is their most faithful act. Silence honors mystery. It acknowledges that pain is not always solvable, but silence is uncomfortable. Eventually, the friends begin to speak, and when they do, the tone shifts. Their words are structured, logical, and deeply flawed. They assume a moral formula where suffering equals guilt. They search for hidden sin, convinced that God's justice must operate predictably. This reveals something unsettling about human nature. When faced with unexplained suffering, we often defend our understanding of God rather than listen to the wounded. The friends believe they're defending divine justice. In reality, they're shrinking God to fit their certainty. Job responds not with polite agreement, but with anguish. He insists on his integrity. He does not claim perfection, but he rejects false guilt. His speeches are raw, emotional, and sometimes contradictory. He questions God's silence. He longs for explanation. He even wishes he had never been born. These words trouble many readers. Yet Scripture preserves them. Job's honesty is not edited out. This teaches something crucial. Faith is not fragile. God is not threatened by questions. Job's lament does not break relationship. It deepens it. What does this reveal about humanity? It reveals our deep need for meaning. Pain without explanation is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry. Job is not seeking comfort alone. He is seeking understanding. He wants to know whether his suffering has purpose or whether the universe is governed by chaos. As the dialogue unfolds, a younger voice enters the conversation. Elihu speaks with passion, attempting to correct both Job and his friends. He emphasizes God's transcendence and the limits of human understanding. His presence prepares the ground for what comes next, but he does not resolve the tension. Then, at last, God speaks. When God answers Job, he does not explain the heavenly counsel. He does not justify suffering. He does not provide the reasons Job has been seeking. Instead, God asks questions. Question after question unfolds, not to humiliate Job, but to reorient him. God points to creation, to the foundations of the earth, to the movement of stars, to creatures both wild and powerful. The message is not that Job's suffering is insignificant. The message is that reality is vast, ordered, and purposeful beyond human comprehension. This is one of the most misunderstood moments in Scripture. God is not saying, "I am powerful, so stop asking." He is saying, "There is more happening than you can see." Job's suffering is real. His pain matters, but it exists within a world sustained by wisdom far greater than human perspective. Job's response is quiet. He does not argue. He does not demand further explanation. He recognizes that his understanding was partial. His faith has shifted. Before, he knew about God. Now, he knows God more deeply. This distinction matters profoundly. Job's faith was not destroyed by suffering. It was refined. His relationship with God moved from assumption to encounter. He did not receive answers, but he received presence. What does this reveal about God's character? It reveals a God who values relationship over explanation, a God who invites trust not because every path is visible, but because his nature is faithful. God does not promise understanding in advance. He promises presence in the midst. After this encounter, God addresses Job's friends. He rebukes them, not for speaking, but for misrepresenting him. Their certainty distorted truth. Their explanations wounded rather than healed. This moment is sobering. Good intentions do not excuse false theology. Accuracy about God matters deeply, especially in moments of suffering. Job is then restored. His health returns. His losses are replaced. His life continues. But it is important not to rush here. Restoration does not erase loss. Job's original children are not replaced as if they were objects. The narrative does not suggest that restoration cancels grief. It shows that suffering is not the final word. This ending reveals something balanced and careful. God does restore. God does redeem. But restoration is not the reason for faith. Job's faith endured long before restoration arrived. His trust was proven in absence, not reward. Before we move toward closing reflection, if this exploration of Scripture has been meaningful, take a moment now to like this video and subscribe to BibleScope. Your support allows these long, thoughtful journeys into biblical truth to continue. Job's story remains deeply relevant because it refuses to simplify pain. It does not promise that faith prevents suffering. It does not teach that obedience guarantees comfort. Instead, it reveals a God who remains sovereign and present even when reasons are withheld. What does this mean for those who suffer today? It means that unanswered questions are not signs of abandoned faith. Silence from heaven is not absence of care. It means that trust is sometimes the bravest act a person can offer, not because it feels strong, but because it chooses not to let pain redefine God. Job's endurance was not perfection. He spoke harshly at times. He despaired. He questioned. Yet through it all, he refused to sever relationship. This is the core of enduring faith. Not flawless belief, but persistent turning toward God even when understanding collapses. The book of Job does not solve suffering. It sanctifies it. It places pain within the hands of God, who governs creation with wisdom beyond sight. It teaches that faith does not eliminate darkness, but it anchors the soul within it. As we leave Job, sitting once more in quiet, surrounded not by ashes, but by renewed life, the mystery remains. But so does the invitation. An invitation to trust God, not because everything is clear, but because He is faithful. An invitation to bring questions without fear. An invitation to believe that suffering, though never desired, can deepen rather than destroy relationship with the Almighty. If this reflection has spoken to you, remember again to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And as you carry Job's story with you, may it remind you that even in the deepest silence, faith is not wasted, and God's presence is never absent.